Finding random frames in Blade Runner 2049 until it's ugly, shot by the great Roger Deakins. This is going to be quite the task. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's a cool cityscape. The first thing you need to know about this shot and this movie is that a lot of the cityscapes were shot with miniatures, not only to replicate the look of the original film, but also because I think miniatures just look better than CGI in most cases. The production designer Dennis Gassner said that when they were working on the pre-production for this film, they came up with a touchstone word to describe the look of the film that they were wanting to achieve, and that word was brutality. They wanted this world to feel brutal, they wanted it to feel uninviting and cold. And if you have seen the recent movie The Brutalist, you know that there is actually a type of architecture that is called brutalist architecture. The term brutalism actually comes from a French word that means raw concrete, and brutalist architecture is characterized by this raw emphasis of function over form, often resulting in massive monolithic structures, as you can see in images like this. So, not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's a great shot. The lighting here is motivated by these LED tubes that are mounted in the wall of this man's futuristic apartment, and that just creates an opportunity for a very neutral, slightly blue light on his skin. But what's really interesting about this shot is this area right here. As you can see, we are seeing through her character because she is actually a computer program hologram thing. Now, how they achieved a shot like this where you can see through a character is actually pretty simple. They did not turn her into a ghost, no. Instead, they shot two separate shots. One shot of just the background with no actors in it, and then a shot with the actors doing their thing. They then, in post-production, overlaid the shot of the actors on top of the shot of just the background and adjusted the opacity on Ana de Armas's character specifically. Now, they could have taken this effect a lot further, but the director really wanted us to be able to connect with her character as if she was an actual person, and they thought that if they made her completely digital looking, then we wouldn't have that connection. So, next shot. 1, 2, 3. But first, if you're enjoying these videos, please consider liking the video and subscribing and commenting because it really helps out with the algorithm, and I'm trying to get to 20,000 subscribers before the end of the year. If I do that, then I will make a very special video. I don't know what it is, but I will do it, so subscribe and stuff. Okay, this is a great shot. Here we can see the internal organs of these brutalist structures, which are very symmetrical and angular. Now, how they lit this shot is actually pretty interesting because the light in this shot moves, as you can see here. So what they did was they had a 24K bare bulb, just a bulb without the housing around it, shooting directly down onto the characters and creating these shadows right here. And as the characters walked down the steps, they actually had the electricians move the bulb with them so that it created this moving shadow pattern on the wall. I believe they were also lighting this area back here on the stairwell with 10K bare bulbs as well. And a 24K bare bulb is a very bright source, and when you take away the lens that might usually be in front of that bare bulb, it creates a much harsher light, a much more defined shadow, as you can see behind them right here. If it was a very soft shadow, even if that shadow was moving, you wouldn't be able to tell as much because there's not much contrast between the light and the dark part of the image. We can also go a little bit further to the next scene, right here where we see them walking down the hallway, and again we have moving lights. Now, first of all, you might be asking, why did they move the lights? That doesn't even really make sense. They are inside of a building. Well, I think partly they took inspiration from the original Blade Runner, which had a lot of moving lights that were motivated from outside the window by the spinner ships with spotlights going around searching for criminals, and the spotlight would sometimes flood in through the window. But also, I believe the location this takes place in is Neander Wallace's compound where he creates replicants, and he's a very rich man, and you might expect him to have state-of-the-art, high-tech, experimental lighting and stuff in his place. I don't know. But anyway, the way they lit this scene was with a giant 24K sky pan on a pulley system that the electricians pulled as they moved down the hallway. And that's a sky pan, not a sky panel. According to Wikipedia, a sky pan is used by the director of photography for lighting scenery that lies outside a set's window or door. Sky pans are circular with an upraised ridge around the outside. It is made up of a reflective white pan that has a detachable heavy-duty lamp socket rigged in front of the pan by being clamped to the lip. As you can see, here's an example of a Mole Richardson Skypan 5K. The Skypan they used in this specific scene would have been a lot larger. So not ugly, really cool shot. 1, 2, 3. It's really cool too. Here we have what looks to be a simple shot with a very nice silhouette of Wallace in front of a lit background that is probably being flagged off to create this shadow pattern. But again, as you will see, the light on the wall moves. And the way they did it in this scene is by creating 3 circles of light around 25 feet in circumference with about 35 10K Fresnel lamps on each circle. And then they put those on dimmer chasers to create a pattern of moving light. They also had square cuts of flags 15 feet below the lamps that created these patterns on the wall. Not ugly, here we go, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's a cool shot. Again, we are motivating light from these LED boxes in the wall, so if you take a look at her face, you can see that she has light coming in from this side and light coming in from this side. That just creates a nice pattern of light and dark on her face, where you go from light to dark to light. This creates depth in her face, even though she is against a flat wall. We are also creating depth by shooting into the corner right here, even though it's not a super pronounced corner, which creates a little bit of a vanishing point. And we are also creating depth by throwing him, the foreground, out of focus. We even have a little bit of foreground right here that is creating some depth. And what's probably also going on with the lighting here is that she is being lit with this on the wall on this side of her face, but he is not. This light is probably not coming from this, because if it was, I would anticipate it being a lot darker, because as we know, the closer the light is to a subject, the brighter the subject will be. And they look about the same brightness on this side of their face, so that doesn't really make sense due to the inverse square law, which says that light falls off and becomes dark pretty fast. So they probably have another LED light of the same type just mounted above the frame right here, blasting down on him. Other than that, just take a note of the visual style of the interior design of his home right here. It is very prefab. It is very modular looking. It looks kind of like a boxable house. It looks like it was printed in a studio, like 3D printed in a factory and then shipped here. And I think that gives it an overall just cold, robotic feel that matches the character who lives in it. So, not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is a really cool set. Apparently the design of this set was inspired by the Darwin Center cocoon, and it is lit almost entirely with these LED ribbon strips that are embedded into the floor on the edges of the set. There's also a little bit of soft light coming from above with airy sky panels, but Roger Deakins said that was pretty minimal. As far as the set design goes, it is a very impressive set. I think the lines here are doing a lot of work in drawing our eyes from the edges of the frame to our focal point of the image, but they are also creating depth. Look how this line just kind of bends around and vanishes into the distance. It's an interesting way of creating depth, because we see that the line is big and then it gets small to the point of not even seeing it. So not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Great shot. I believe this is the scene where Ana de Armas's character invites a actual human girl over, and they like combine kind of so that Ryan Gosling can have intimacies with a real human. And it's a very interesting scene visually effects wise, because it looks very complicated, but the way they did it again was actually very simple. They did it in a similar way that they did to the previous visual effects shot with Ana de Armas's robotic character. They simply locked the camera off on a tripod and shot Ana de Armas doing her acting, and then switched out the actresses and had Mackenzie Davis try to mimic Ana de Armas's movements exactly, and then shot her scene, and then in post they overlaid one scene on top of the other, adjusting the opacity as needed. So not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, very cool atmospheric look right here. Now you might think the way they achieved the color in this shot is just through color grading and post-production. They just put a lot of orange into it with DaVinci Resolve, but that is not how Roger Deakins likes to work. He likes to get the color on set as close as possible. And the way they did that for these scenes, I believe, is that they actually just used a filter pack in front of the camera lens that Tiffin had made for them. In this case, it was a combination of Lee 790 Moroccan Pink and 105 Orange that gave it this overall orangish red look. Now, obviously, some color grading was done as well. It didn't look exactly like this when it came out of the camera, but I think a good principle for beginning cinematographers to try to take to heart is to try and make it look as close to the end product as you want it to on set, so that you don't have to fiddle with it as much in post-production, and so that it just looks better, because the more digital effects you apply to the image, the worse it's probably going to look. As far as how they lit this scene, I believe they had 250 space lights mounted to the ceiling up here. They also had 20 maxi brutes that were gelled with green that gave it a highlight in the sky, and I believe that you can see that the color actually does change from this shade of orange to this more bright little greenish highlight right here in the atmosphere. And I think that's what's going on, is the maxi brutes are gelled with green and creating a different kind of color in the atmosphere. Really cool though. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, gorgeous. This is inside the building that he is walking to in the previous shot. And so I believe that this is actually not a set. This is actually a practical location, which is a old stock exchange building in Budapest. And they shot a lot of shots in this location, so what they had to do actually was blast 18K HMIs through these windows, and there were a lot of windows throughout the set that they had to do the same thing with. And then they also had to gel these windows with kind of a reddish orange gel to match the color that is shown inside, because obviously the color of the daylight outside these windows is probably more blue, so they had to change that to more of a red orange look with gels. Not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, gorgeous shot. So again, the way they are achieving the color in this shot is by gelling the light. Specifically in this scene, I think they have 10 T12s outside of the window blasting inside, and also 32 T12s gelled with a lighter amber hung from the ceiling, bouncing off a white piece of fabric that is spilling in just a little bit. If I go a little bit further, see if I can see out the window. Yeah, outside the window here. Apparently this is a painted backdrop outside here that is being lit with 75 2K Blondie lights. So here again, we have them opting for a more classical, practical method for achieving things that would typically nowadays be achieved with CGI. And I appreciate that. Okay, not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Really cool. The coolest thing about this set is the water patterns on the wall, and the way they are doing that is simply by blasting them with 10K lights and just hitting off the water, and then they had wave machines off to the side that would create a little bit of ripple effect in the water, and that would obviously make the light bounce off the ripples and reflect onto the wall. Very cool way to add texture to a scene. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this is a really nice shot too. I believe that this image of Ana de Armas's character was actually shot beforehand, and then this image was actually played on a big LED screen. So apparently they had a 40-foot by 30-foot LED screen in front of Ryan Gosling's character right here that was actually playing this footage on it, and that created a light cast on his character. Let me see if I can find what his character looks like. So yeah, here we can see that the light on his face is primarily this pinkish purplish color, and that is because they were actually playing that pinkish purplish color on the LED screen that was in front of him. They weren't using typical lights. And it looks really nice. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's a cool shot. I mean, it might be my least favorite shot we've seen so far, but it's nice. It's primarily being lit with these embedded LED tubes that are coming from the ceiling. That might be all that's lighting it, honestly. I'm sure the LED tubes extend in front of him and then are lighting him from more of the front, creating the shadow on his face. It's more of a flat looking lighting situation, but it's not bad. It looks pretty good for the situation that he's in. Let's go back a little bit. 1, 2, 3. Just study Roger Deakins close-ups if you want to learn how to light a good close-up, because it is very well lit. Look at this. Again, we see something that I have repeated in these videos multiple times, and that is a pattern of light to dark, light to dark. Here we can see that the image is light over here, then it transitions to dark, then we have light on her hair that is separating her from the background, her edge light, then we have dark on this side of her face, then we have some light, then we have some dark from her nose shadow, then we have some light from the key light on this side, then we have some dark in the shadows on the wall right here, then we have light, and then we have dark again. This creates an interesting image because it creates depth and contrast. Also, it doesn't hurt that your actress is Ana de Armas. Very nice shot. 1, 2, 3. Wow. I'm guessing that the way they achieved this with all these water patterns on the wall is they actually had water up here above the actors, and then they were just blasting lights down through it, and again creating a ripple effect with a wave machine through the water. And that's amazing. You know, I can't do that. I don't have the resources to do that. I wish I did. Not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's nice. I like that. A lot of uplighting. Uplighting is just when you light from below, which can create kind of an eerie, spooky look, but I think it also creates kind of a futuristic look as well. You will see that a lot in the original film if you watch it again. A lot of uplighting. Not ugly at all. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's cool. Nice silhouette caused by the LED tubes in the spinner. Not ugly. 1, 2, 3. What is this? Yeah, I'm gonna have to say this individual frame is ugly because I wouldn't hang this on my wall, but that doesn't mean it's not a good shot in its context. Here's the shot in its context. But the name of this game is not Find the Ugly Shot, it's Find the Ugly Frame, and we found the ugly frame. So there you go. Next time, I will be going over the original Blade Runner, so subscribe and come back for that one.